that's good. I don't know if you know this, but you can just grate fresh raw ginger and put it in, like, just steep it in your cup. I have this adorable little guy, the little scuba diver. Yeah, I just put fresh raw ginger in there, and then I put that and steep it in some warm water, and it's amazing. I made this cup a little spicy, which is kind of fitting for today's video. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for being here. As you can tell, this is a little bit of a different video. I have not shot a video like this for this channel, and the reason that I'm doing it is because, you know, I've been gone for like a month. I haven't been on this channel in like a month. I haven't shared any videos. I have a lot of good videos coming out soon for all of you. I've been filming like a mad woman, just wanting to catch up and to get you really good content. But I've been gone from the channel because essentially my life got turned upside down and my family has been sick, I've been sick, and we were struggling, and I just needed some time to process and figure out my new life. So as you can see by the title, I am no longer vegan. My family is no longer vegan. I was plant-based for 11 and a half years, and I was mostly vegan during that time. There was a little bit of a transition period where I think I had some eggs from our chickens and some shrimp and maybe salmon. And then I had some eggs off and on, like the first few years of my plant-based journey. And you know, my oldest son, he's been vegan since essentially he was like 6.5, 7, and my youngest son has been vegan since conception. My husband's been vegan for about 5.5, 6 years, I believe, and you know, we were pretty hardcore vegans. We were vegan for health, we were vegan for the animals, we were vegan for the planet. We really, really believed that it was the best diet, it was the ultimate diet, it was it for us. And we lived in this happy little vegan bubble until I really started to struggle with health ailments. But even then, I kind of ignored those, and I kept trying to do cleanse after cleanse or different style of eating and after different style of eating. And it wasn't really until my son started to have some chronic stomach problems and other issues that I had to kind of put the brakes on and reevaluate like what we were eating, how we were eating, and ultimately if the way we were eating was the best for our family. So before we go too much further, I want to address the whole vegan bully movement. I'm not going to tolerate that at all. If you come on here and you want to write comments like, well, you just didn't do it right, or you didn't take the right supplements, or, you know, you're a horrible person, I can't believe you would go vegan and go back, you would be vegan and go back, like, just don't. I'm not going to tolerate that. I won't post those comments. I'm not going to respond to them. And shame on you if that's something that you want to do, because as a vegan, you're supposed to, compassion is supposed to be like what you embody. And how can you be embodying compassion if you're attacking a fellow human? So now that that's out of the way, let's dive in. I want to try to make this video short. I don't want it to be some crazy like long thing. This is the third time I've sat down to film this video because there's so much information that I want to share with you. And it's hard to get it all into one video. So I'm gonna take another sip of tea, and then we're just gonna jump right in. Okay, so it's important to premise that when I say I was pretty hardcore vegan, I believed in the vegan lifestyle, I lived it, I didn't buy anything that was made from animal products. My family just fully, like 100% were immersed in that world, and we really did believe in it. And I tried every type of vegan diet that there was to be had. When I first went vegan, I ate a lot of raw vegan meals. I did high carb, low fat vegan. I did just more of a well-rounded whole foods, plant-based vegan. You know, in those like 11 years, there was periods of junk food veganism, but not for very long. I did medical medium cleanses. I did high carb, low fat McDougall diets. I did all of them. I even tried keto veganism for a short period of time when I was weightlifting more, and I really did try the full spectrum of vegan living. You know, I did a lot of fermented things. I did a microbiome diet for a while. Like, I did no supplements. I did supplements. I did just gut health. I did kind of everything under the sun that you can do long term. And my health really started to decline, if I'm being honest with myself, about 5 to 6 years ago, right after I had my second son. And it makes sense because I just had gone through a pregnancy, and I always make a lot of milk when I'm lactating, so I was breastfeeding and just I was nourishing another body, and I wasn't nourishing myself. But let's backtrack a little bit to like how I became vegan. So I grew up on a standard American diet. I ate like crap. It wasn't my parents' fault. It just, they didn't necessarily know any better. They were that era of like, you know, boxed meals, Betty Crocker, shake and bake, those types of things, but, you know, also not super healthy. I had a diabetic grandmother, a mother who was obese, and, you know, they just, we didn't eat well. She tried. She did a lot of yo-yo dieting, but ultimately I grew up on a lot of junk food, sodas, lots of sugar. Wasn't a healthy kid. I had chronic teeth problems. I had migraines as a child. I just had a lot of problems, including a lot of gut issues. So I would say my gut issues really started when I was probably 8 or 9, and I grew up eating Tums and Gaviscon. When I got into high school and I started eating even worse, I was like living on antacids. I had them in my purse, in my car, in my locker at school, right next to my bedside. I had them everywhere because I constantly had heartburn. So I want to premise the start of my health journey just to let you know that like I wasn't a healthy person to start. So when I came into my 20s, then I added alcohol to the mix, and that made it even worse. So I was drinking a lot. I was a bartender. I was like freaking drinking every night. And, you know, my health started to decline. And when I was like 25, my mom was diagnosed with colon cancer, and that just rocked my world. She was my best friend. And it kind of just opened my eyes to the medical industry and the food industry because she was doing a lot of research. Shortly after I met my husband, and together we started to clean up our diet, and still my health problems persisted. I was trying to eat better, but I really, was trying to incorporate more organic. I really got into the local movement. I was starting to research so much on food and farming. I got obsessed with sustainability and homesteading and wanting to be able to live sustainably and off-grid. And I was into that, but my health continued to decline. And I would go to doctors and they would do blood work and they'd be like, there's nothing wrong with you. You're a vision of health. I even had one doctor tell me that it was probably all in my head, that it was psychosomatic, can't say that word. He just thought that I was like going crazy or I was depressed. So then he decided to prescribe me, antidepressants. And I was like, dude, I'm not freaking depressed. I'm sick. So I had chronic nausea, heartburn, aches and pains. I just felt like I had the flu all the time. I had low-grade fevers. I just felt horrible. The fatigue was probably the worst because it was really hard to get out of bed most days. And this was when I was like 27, 28, so I was young. And I remember lying in bed and just being like, if this is how my life is going to be, like, what's the point? Like, I can't even live. I have no quality of life. And on top of that, I started to get arthritis, or I started to get really bad joint pain. So I was experiencing such joint pain that I would limp. I couldn't even grab a pair of scissors. Like, I was sick. And so finally I ended up finding this book, Green for Life by Victoria Butenko. It completely changed my life. I'm still so grateful to the Butenkos and this book because I started incorporating green smoothies and green juices. And, I started to feel a little better, of course, because I was starting to incorporate foods that actually had nutrients and vitamins and minerals in them. But I started to do a lot of green smoothies, and then I ended up cutting out gluten, and I ended up going on like a vegan cleanse. I found the book Eat to Live by Joel Fuhrman, and I went on his cleanse, and I felt remarkably better. I lost a few pounds, my energy was better, my gut was better. Then I cut out gluten completely, and I started eating a lot of fermented foods, and then I started doing like the raw vegan diet with like paired with fermented things, and I started to feel a lot better and better and better and better. And probably within like 6 months, I was doing remarkably better. And it was that next year that I ended up pregnant with my first son. And I was so grateful to the vegan diet, right? And I'm still so grateful to the vegan diet and plants and the fact that I was able to heal myself. I still believe in vegan cleanses. I still believe in the vegan diet short term. But for myself, it just doesn't work long term. And I'm going to get into that a little bit later, and I'm going to give you some resources to check out. But yeah, I felt good. I was excited about it. I started to find all these vegan influencers, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to eat 8 bananas for breakfast. And then I'm going to have these huge salads. I won't mention all these YouTubers, but they're all out there. And if you've been vegan for any length of time, you probably know them. But, it's like eating these giant food bowls of salad and fruits and giant smoothies and giant green juices. And I did feel better than I had felt when I was really sick in my 20s. So after I had my second son, I started to notice that I was dizzy all the time, and I was like really fatigued because I had two kids. I mean, two young children that didn't sleep. I mean, of course, I was tired and fatigued. But I started to get vertigo, and I started to get dizzy, and I started to experience anxiousness, which I didn't know that's what it was at the time, but I started to have anxiety and just issues. And there were some like environmental factors. My husband was traveling a lot at the time. We had a farm. I was in charge of a whole lot, plus a young newborn and like a toddler, and there was a lot. So I just kind of wrote it off as that. But that was really when the first symptoms started to come around. But during that time, I decided to go back to school for nutrition. I went to Institute for Integrative Nutrition at the time, got just super knowledgeable in nutrition, all different types of nutrition, worldwide styles of eating, Ayurveda, veganism, keto, paleo, just all these different styles of eating. So I was learning all about those ways, but still in my head, I was like, vegan's the way, only veganism. And, time went on. I got my certification with nutrition, and then we ended up moving, and my symptoms started to pick up more and more. And the more my symptoms picked up, the more I would cleanse, because I thought that I was like struggling with a virus or something. I never felt quite right, and I started to get really spacey and out of it, and that was about 4 years ago. I also started to gain weight. No matter how much I worked out, it was so incredibly hard to lose any type of weight. I noticed I was starting to store more fat on my body, especially in my midsection, which I had never done before. And my legs, I was getting cellulite more and more, and I just work out, and I was doing all these things. I was eating really well. I was eating salads and lots of fruits and veggies and smoothies and green juices, and I would do green juice fasts, and I would do medical medium cleanses, and nothing ever really worked. So as time's gone on, my symptoms have gotten worse. So up until just a few weeks ago, the symptoms that I was dealing with were consistent weight gain that I just couldn't seem to shake, and water retention. So I'd wake up in the morning and my legs would just be swollen. It's really weird. I had headaches. Fatigue was starting to sneak back in, where I couldn't make it through a day without having to lie down, which was really weird for me. But that's been kind of creeping up on me for the last couple years, and now it just got so bad that I had to acknowledge it. I have had chronic heartburn and stomach bloating the last year and a half, I would say. It's been really bad the last 5 months, where almost everything that I eat makes me bloated, but I didn't realize how bloated I was until I stopped eating the way I was eating. And I'm gonna get to that in a minute. But I've just had really bad dry skin, and I thought, well, I live in Arizona, that's why. But just noticing my skin was just sagging more and aging more, and my eyes under here were starting to just be more sunken in. I had really dark circles. My boys and my husband had really dark circles and just kind of looked pale and sickly. And I'll also get into what was going on with my son too. Like I said, see this video, it could just go on, and it was just, never end. But I noticed that I was struggling more and more with anxiety. So over the last 4 years, my anxiety has gotten worse, and I was never an anxious person, even in some of the most traumatic times in my life. I just wasn't an anxious person. Yes, I would have stress, and I would have dips, highs and lows of feeling good, but ultimately the anxiety was building more and more and more. And the room would spin, and I would just feel super lightheaded. I literally have felt like I've been floating for the last 4 years. I also didn't really realize how bad that was until I changed the way that I was eating and got more grounded. But I was just, the anxiety was getting worse. These breakdowns I was having, and yes, the world is collectively going through some turmoil, we'll say. Of course, there's gonna be a low level feeling of anxiety that's so easy to tap into, right? But myself, I was just struggling more and more, and I kept saying to my friends and my closest, the people closest to me, my brain isn't working anymore. Cognitively, it's not functioning right. I can't remember things. I get super spacey. I'm distracted. I just kind of stare off into space. I can't get things done. And my husband was always frustrated because he's like, I told you this, you were looking right at me, you agreed. I just wasn't remembering anything. And I just was like, what is going on with my brain? I was trying to figure out herb protocol or herb blends to help my brain. And I just felt really, really off. And recently, I finally just had this massive breakdown where I was holding my head and I was like, what is wrong with my brain? my brain is not working right. Like, what is wrong with you? And I kind of just got a download in that moment. I just keep touching this, beating this plant. I love you, plant. I had this like download that I needed fats. My brain needed fats, you know, and it makes sense. I've been doing the McDougall protocol, which is a high carb, low fat vegan diet off and on for a good 3 years because I thought it was the best. But, you know, my brain needed fats, my body needed fats, and I wasn't listening to it. And so I got this download that was like, girl, go get yourself a salmon and eat it. Like, not really like that, but it was saying like, you need fats, you need the omegas, go get a fish, like go get a salmon. And I kind of sat with that information for a few days. I'd had a couple friends say something kind of similar to the effect of like, have you guys thought about looking at your diet? And the reason they say that is because of my son. So my son started to really decline about 5 months ago. He's had dark circles for years. Both he and Theo have struggled with dark circles and kind of just looking pale. They've never been overly thin. Like my oldest has always been super thin, but I mean, you should see his dad. And I was like really thin as a child. So I'm not concerned about that, but the dark circles were always kind of a concern to me because they just looked unhealthy and they didn't have much color in their face. And it got worse and worse. And then my son started talking about nausea, and he would have these chronic nausea and gut pain every morning when he woke up and throughout the day. And it was getting, and then fatigue. It was getting to where if he overexerted himself, he would have to like rest the entire next day. And these are children who used to be very energetic. I mean, you guys, I made a program, an entire program. I invested months of my life to make a program on teaching families how to transition to a vegan lifestyle. My children used to be vibrant and crazy and full of energy, and I really believed in this diet. So I really want you to understand that this was hard for me, and also really, really great for me as well on a spiritual level, and I will get into that. But my son's health was failing, and I couldn't figure it out, and we finally had some blood work done, and he came back slightly anemic. And you know, a lot of people are anemic. I wasn't too concerned, but we've been doing supplements. And I did notice like, oh, my supplement regimen just kept growing, and suddenly I had so many supplements to take, and had to give supplements to my kids and smoothies because they're not going to take all these supplements. And I was always kind of against supplements for the longest time. And then slowly as time went on, I got into them. I thought, well, we can't get everything we need from the soil anyway, because our soil these days is pretty crappy. You know, the microbiome of our soil is suffering. So, you know, we all need supplements. All of us should be taking supplements. Everybody should be taking B12. Everybody should be taking Ks and Ds and all these things. So my son was struggling, and I was in a panic, and I was struggling. My health was declining more and more. My gut was hurting all the time, and I just felt tired and depressed and anxious, but with it also intuitive knowledge that my brain needed something. It wasn't that I was sick, it was that I was depleted. And I kind of had this kind of wake up moment. So after I had that download of like, girl, go get yourself some salmon, I started researching, because it's what I do. I researched, and it was hard for me because veganism was my identity. It was my family's identity. It was part of who we were. You know, I don't even have normal cookbooks anymore. I only have vegan cookbooks. I have been vegan long enough where like it's my life. And it sounds crazy because I've learned through doing massive amounts of research in the last few weeks that veganism isn't sustainable for the planet. It's not good for the animals. It's not what I thought that it was, and it hasn't been good for my health. And that was really hard for me. So I really had to wrap my head around a whole new way of thinking, because I truly did believe in eating vegan for the planet, for the animals, for myself, for my health. I thought it was the best. And I'm not going to get into like the science, because then this video would be like 3 hours long, but there were two main sources that really changed my mind. And I listened to hours upon hours of stories of people who'd been vegan and changed. I read books, I read articles, I just dug and dug. I just researched and researched and researched and researched. And yeah, what I found was shocking to me, but also not unknown, because I had started to go down the lifestyle that I am living in now. Before I went vegan, I feel like I kind of got derailed into the vegan lifestyle, thinking that it was the ultimate way to live. And so I'm not completely in a place where this is completely new to me. My husband and I and my stepdaughter lived on a ranch in Oregon. We lived in a really remote area full of ranchers and farmers. We knew that lifestyle. We knew what it was like to raise animals. My husband even had cows of his own at one point. We had our own chickens. We've had horses. We've had all these animals, and we've also gardened quite a bit. And you learn that the way that you raise food or grow food is so entirely different than the way that most of us have experienced growing up, like in a standard American household. I didn't know where my food came from. I had never gardened. I had never raised animals. I had never even been to a slaughterhouse or experienced a hunt. Everything just came from the supermarket. That's what I thought. I had no actual connection to the food. And so no wonder that I was so sick before I went vegan. So the video that I am going to share with you is called The Dangers of Veganism by Happy Now Olivia. And I'll put that in the show notes. I feel like she just beautifully articulates everything that I have learned in the last month. And if you really want to dive into more of the health aspects and the sustainability, all of it, she articulates it really beautifully. And with that video, I went on to listen to The Vegetarian Myth, which I'm still getting through, but you only need to get into the first few chapters to be completely mind blown. If you have been vegetarian for any length of time or vegan for any length of time, it's gonna blow your mind. And I would highly suggest that if you are vegan and you truly believe in it and you say, I would never not be vegan, and never, it's the way, it's the only way, it's the only way for me. And maybe it is. I'm not doubting that there are people that have been doing it for a really long time. It just didn't work for me, and I know it doesn't work for a lot of people, and it's why I wanted to do this video, because there's not a lot of these videos. There's not as many of these videos as there are like that veganism saved my life and it's amazing and it's helped me and it's healed me and all these things. And I'm not discounting that it doesn't do that. I really do believe in the vegan lifestyle or the vegan diet for healing and cleansing, but I don't believe in it any longer for the benefit of the animals or the planet. And Happy Now Olivia talks more about that, but also The Vegetarian Myth. You gotta read it. Everybody should read it. I feel like it should just be a textbook in schools. Like, it's so to the point and sourced. It's just good. You should just read it, or just listen to it. Read it, listen to it. I don't know. I listened to it on Audible. It's written by a woman who was vegan for 20 years and vegetarian for longer than that. And it's mind-blowing. Veganism isn't what I thought it was. And I'll let you guys do more research. But essentially, the one thing that keeps sticking out to me is that in one vegan plate of grains and maybe some tofu or not, maybe just fresh veggies, fruit, maybe some rice or quinoa, maybe a piece of toast, right? One beautiful Buddha bowl full of vegetables and grains kills more animals than, if you just bought a cow for the year and fed your family on that. One vegan meal is more damaging to our planet and to animals than I just ever could even conceive. And like I said, I really highly suggest you listen to The Vegetarian Myth. But that was a big mind-blowing thing for me. And also the fact that as a gardener, and I knew this, but I never put two and two together, I guess. As a gardener, you have to purchase compost. You either have to purchase compost or you have to get it from a local farmer. And that compost is full of manure, blood, and bones of animals. You cannot get around that. If you try to buy processed compost that comes from like old fossil fuels, you're still essentially putting ground up dinosaurs, reptiles, fossil fuels, like exoskeletons on your plants. There's no way to get around the fact that plants, they need healthy soil to grow healthy produce. And so in using that compost, you are you're using blood, bones, and feces and urine from an animal. So if you are trying to be vegan and you are trying to say, I am not going to ever use anything that comes from an animal, then that's impossible. And if you go to the store and you buy a bag of rice or a bag of quinoa or wheat, you contribute to industrialized ag. Unless you're growing it yourself and you're literally going out there and you're like cutting it down yourself, right? You are investing in industrialized agriculture, which uses tilling, massive tilling, and which is incredibly horrible for the soil. I'm not going to get into that, but part of the problem with our planet right now and sustainability and the carbon that's getting into the atmosphere and all these things and the runoff is that we're losing soil at an exponential rate. So when you buy a bag of rice and you bring it home and you cook up that meal with your rice, you're investing in industrialized ag, and ag uses tilling, which is horrible for the soil, and also combines. So these huge, all these acres of grains, how do you think they cut it? They use a combine. Well, baby deer, skunks, possums, birds, rats, mice, snakes, they all live in that beautiful field of grain. And often they don't get away fast enough before that combine chops them up into little bits. And I know this firsthand because we had farmer friends in Oregon who used to talk about this, especially the baby deer who freeze when they're scared and don't move. They think if they just huddle down, they'll be safe. They get chopped up by that combine. So you don't live a life where you are not hurting an animal in that way. I never, ever, ever would get any type of animal flesh or product from factory farming. But the realization for me that as a vegan, there's no way to not harm animals. And when you buy that grain, it kills way more animals than if you just had a chicken and you slaughtered it in your backyard. I mean, or you went to a local farmer and you purchased that chicken or that cow or that sheep or goat or whatever it is, and you brought that home. The carbon footprint from eating locally and living locally is one thing. Environmentally, we cannot afford to cut down any more trees or any more land for industrialized ag to feed us or animals. So for me, it's not so black and white anymore. I thought veganism was the best for the animals and the planet, but in reality, the huge growth of people who are relying on grains is unsustainable for our planet. And like I said, I'm not going to get into a whole lot more detail than that. I really suggest you go listen to The Vegetarian Myth if you want to dive in more, or go listen to the YouTube video by Happy Now Olivia. She breaks it down really beautifully, a lot better than I do. So what happened, right? I'm sure you want to know. And goodness, this video is so long already. I walked outside to my husband who was in the backyard, and I said, after doing massive amounts of research, I started crying and I said, I think that I need to eat meat. I think I need meat and fats and oils for my brain. Because he knew my mental health has been suffering. He knew this, and because he was the scapegoat often. So of course he was supportive. He kind of looked at me like, what? Because this is the last thing that anybody would ever think that I would say. I was so passionate about the vegan lifestyle. So anyway, he went to Whole Foods. He got me a wild caught salmon, humanely caught, all these things. And we sat down that night and we ate it. And for the first time, and I don't know how long, I was satiated. Maybe 6 years, maybe 7. I don't know how long it's been. The next morning I woke up and I felt a little bit more alive. My son also had a little bit of the salmon. And the next morning we got up and we drove 2 hours to a local farm to get eggs, because I want to make sure that I'm supporting local, and I also want to make sure that the animals are treated well and that they are free range and pasture raised and all those things, and organic. And we came home and we made eggs for breakfast, and same experience, just a complete level of satiation. Satiation, is that a word? I don't know, I make up words. I was satiated and it felt amazing, and it was shocking at the same time. But also I felt like my body was literally grounding and my brain was working better really quickly. I would say within 24 hours, I could really feel a difference in just my mood, my mental health, the anxiety, some other symptoms. Same thing with my son. My husband and I noticed, like, wow, are you seeing this? He's coming back to life. And my son is doing much, much better. Both of them, they have color in their cheeks, their dark circles are going away. My oldest son, who was struggling with the nausea, that's getting better because we've been doing kind of a gut protocol to heal his gut and mine. And I started to feel like myself again. I started to feel in my body again. I started to feel like my brain worked again. It's amazing. Physically, I didn't expect this, but I woke up the next day. It was the third day that I'd had some eggs and some salmon. I woke up the next day and I had cut out all grain, not intentionally. All I wanted was eggs. I seriously, once I ate the eggs and the salmon, I was like, oh my God, I have to get more. So then we started experimenting with some more meat. But that third day that I woke up, or I guess it was the second day, my stomach was flat. It hasn't been really flat in years. And I didn't realize how bloated I was until that happened. And in 4 days, I lost 7 pounds of water weight and who knows, fat, but mostly water weight that I had been holding on for years. And so at that point, I started incorporating more coconut oil, more fats to my diet. We started branching out and getting different types of meat. I really tried to honor what I was craving. I could do a video talking about that experience a little bit more in depth if you're interested. You can put that in the comments below, but it was not easy for me by any means. Eggs were okay, the salmon was okay. My digestion was ultimately, there was no difference, give or take, in my digestion because my digestion had been suffering for quite a while. But ultimately everything started to feel better. And I lost 7 pounds in 4 days and I was blown away. I lost an inch off of my waist and a 1/4 inch off of my legs. And that's the interesting thing, is that a 1/4 inch of water or fluid I was retaining were sitting on my legs, making me uncomfortable. That's shocking to me. And it's not because of a physical thing, it's because I didn't feel well carrying that excess water. My energy has skyrocketed, it has stayed level. I don't have these crazy dips with my blood sugar because I'm processing protein most of the day now, and I feel really, really good. I'm still healing my gut. I expect that's going to take a few months. Same with my son, but we're both doing much, much better. His nausea is almost gone. It's kind of just hit or miss, like every once in a while. I feel like if he has some sugar. So we're doing kind of a GAPS protocol diet. I'm not gonna get into that either, otherwise this video would be so long, but my brain health has been so different. My mood has been so different. I feel alive again. And I didn't realize how not alive I was, or how not alive my children were. I'm shocked by it. And I also feel like instead of being up here in this vegan kind of dogmatic lifestyle that, I was doing my best and I feel like instead of being so removed from society and culture, I'm actually part of the circle of life. Everything dies. Everything dies. We can't avoid that. And I think as a vegan, I really did try to avoid that. I was just getting so emotional about everything that dies, everything, every bug, every little thing. I would see something on the side of the road. I was just getting incredibly, incredibly emotional. I was getting to the point where the slightest thing would put me in an all-out breakdown. Like I couldn't handle everyday life. And I was starting to just get more and more angry. I was like a yo-yo where I couldn't handle my children. I was irritable. I was not patient anymore. I was just freaking annoyed all the time. Anyway, I know there's way more that I could share. I feel amazing. I'm watching my kids come back to life. I was really worried about them. It has been a transition, eating meat again. It was hard for me mentally because the vegan lifestyle, I don't want to call it a cult, but there are so many similarities in a cult and veganism. I had a lot of brainwashing that I had to overcome. And that made it really hard to eat an animal again. And I am a loving animal person. I've always had animals. I worked at veterinary clinics for years. I wanted to be a veterinarian when I was younger. I want to have a farm. I want to have all these animals. I love animals. Artemis always spoke to me. She's the protector of the hunt, which I find incredibly fascinating now. And she's the protector of the forest and the protector of animals. And she's always spoken to me since I was a little girl. I have her tattooed on my arm. I feel like I'm part of nature now again, instead of some type of entity that was trying to avoid the circle of life. I was trying to avoid death. I was taking myself out of the equation, saying, I'm not going to bring any harm to anything. And realizing in the last month, doing so much research, like it's just impossible. And that our planet cannot sustain, the whole planet to go vegetarian and vegan. I mean, that's not going to happen anyway. I always acknowledge that there are places in the world where people can't be vegan. There are body types that can't be vegan, and including mine. I feel like, though, also it's important to start sharing that sustainability-wise, veganism is not the way to go. Buying local produce, eggs, and grass-fed or pastured meats that have been taken care of, like their pets, from local farmers is the only way that our planet is going to survive, for more ways than one. But yeah, that's where I'm at. So I'm going to stop this here because this is probably at 30 or 40 minutes at this point. And I want to thank you for listening if you've stuck around this whole time. I want to thank you for being open-minded. I hope this has helped somebody. I hope that it's been clear and somewhat articulate and that it makes sense. But I will talk about this again if you're interested. I have really fun videos coming out for you guys soon. Just getting back to regular programming. I'm going to be sharing some herbal tinctures that I've made and some deodorant I made with my son. I have good stuff coming. So stay tuned for those. If you haven't subscribed and you're actually still listening to this video, make sure you do that now. Give this video a thumbs up. And if you have any questions about the vegan lifestyle or the way that I'm eating, or you want to know more about this, like how it was for me eating meat the first time, all of those things, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it was kind of a mind bleep. It was a trip. But yeah, I would be happy to share that. I just don't want to make this video any longer. So thank you so much for listening, and I will see you all soon. Bye.